Chapter 24. Teeth and Ambitions Bared. The pebble kicked by Silas's foot skidded ahead and fell off the bridge, plunging into the ravine below. Splash! It broke the murky surface of the creek, only a seeming trickle winding through the sharp rocks that had injured his father. Silas peered over the edge of the bridge, which had been repaired since the accident. His head swam and he grew dizzy. Fresh guilt churned in his gut as the day of the accident came back full force. Suddenly, someone gripped his arm and kept him in place. He jerked his head around. "Be careful," Natasha said, holding him steady with her voice and her hand. "The bridge might be fixed, but it's still a long way down." "Ugh, you're telling me," Timothy said, right behind her. Anxiously, he looked into the ravine. "Let's get across before I change my mind." Silas flashed them a sheepish smile. He had let his fear and his imagination run wild again, imagining that he was like that tiny pebble skittering and plummeting over the edge. He shook his head to clear it and forged ahead toward the other side of the bridge. He felt steady and able to reach it this time because of one thing. He wasn't alone this time. Having friends didn't make even the worst things better. For some reason, he had thought that he had to come alone to prove his bravery when he first tried to reach the elephant graveyard. But maybe a friend was like courage itself, embodied in a person. Maybe Tarzan and all the great heroes were brave because they had someone like Jane by their side. Buoyed by that thought, he led the way across the rope bridge, which swayed with each step but held up and didn't snap. They clambered onto solid ground and looked back. Silas felt a sense of accomplishment. They'd made it to the other side, but it was quickly replaced by dread as he remembered Scar. "Think this will help us find Zazu?" Timothy asked, scanning the treetops, hoping for a glimpse of the lost parrot. "I really miss that funny bird." "Well, if it's all connected," Natasha said thoughtfully, "the bridge, the accident, the chest and the ghostly lion, then maybe it's possible." "Don't worry," Silas said. "We're going to find him and figure out why this is happening." He tried to sound brave, but his voice wavered. Since he meant every word. They got to work inspecting the bridge and the ropes that anchored it to the boulders, looking for any clues as to why they had snapped before. Silas ran his hands over the fresh knots. The new ropes were a lighter shade than the old ones and were made of what looked like nylon or synthetic fiber. The old ropes had been made of natural fibers and were fraying quite badly. He turned away in frustration. Maybe it was only an accident and nothing more. Could it be his overactive imagination trying to make sense of something terrible that had happened? Often, horrible things had no explanation that made sense. They were simply bad. "Find anything?" he called to the twins, who were inspecting another rope. "Not yet," Natasha said, sounding equally defeated. "Plus, I was thinking, if someone wanted you to fall or your dad to get hurt, who was it?" "That's the problem," Silas said. "I don't know. Only that it wasn't Scar. I opened the chest after the accident when my dad got hurt." "Jeez, you're right," Timothy said, sifting sand through his hands. "That means Scar was still locked away," Natasha finished for him with a knowing look. "Where your aunt imprisoned him with the staff," he added. Silas clutched it tighter. "You're right," he said in frustration. "But who would want to hurt us? I know some of the townsfolk aren't happy about my family taking over the camp, but would they actually try to hurt us? Or worse?" Natasha shook her head. "And if so, why would they come help repair the bridge? Also, they'd have to be like super smart for this plan to work," she went on, "like evil genius smart." Silas felt overwhelmed by all the mysteries. He tramped over behind the boulder and kicked at the sand in annoyance. He felt the staff pulse and jolt him. "What the?" he started, but then he looked down by his feet. That was when he saw something. He picked it out, pulling it from the sand where it had been buried. It was the old rope from the bridge. only it didn't look like it had frayed. The end looked like someone had sawed it through it. His mouth gaped open, but then the staff pulsed again. He whipped around, his foot nudging something else buried in the sand. "What is it?" Natasha said as they both rushed over to see it. "Oh no," Silas said, holding it up. It was a rusty saw. "And look at the end of this rope," Silas said. "What does it look like to you?" "Like somebody cut through it," Timothy said in a pinched voice. "With that saw," Natasha added, pointing to the rusty tool, "and then they tried to hide the evidence by burying it in the sand. But how in the world did you find it?" Silas held the staff, shaking the gourds on the top. "The camp spirit. The staff led me to it." "But who would do this?" Natasha asked, running her fingers along the saw's edge. The blade was dull and rusty, but still ridged and sharp enough to cut through old decaying ropes. "I don't know," Silas said. "All I'm sure about is that somebody doesn't want my family here." The enormity of what they'd found weighed on them. That meant someone really had tried to harm his family. But who could it be? And how did that connect to the ghostly lion haunting the camp? And Zazu going missing? And everything else going on? They were all stumped. The sun was starting to set, and they only had a little daylight left. Silas dug for the strength to ask about the other mystery, the one that had been lingering like a ghost since before they even arrived at Camp Pride Rock. The twins knew way more than they were telling him. After all, they'd been here with his aunt when his aunt died, but their mom had told them to keep quiet. "What really happened to Aunt Scarlet?" Silas said at long last. "Please, you have to tell me. And, well, maybe it'll help us figure out why all this is happening." The twins exchanged looks. Silas worried they'd hold out on him, but they had up to that point. But then Natasha grabbed his arm. "Come with me," she said. "It's better if we show you."